I've been asked to talk about what life in Israel really is like, and I'm not going to tell you the truth, because if I do, you won't come here. No, I'm just kidding, But what I did was, I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself. My name is Yoel. I'm married to that beautiful woman right there, and we have 3 beautiful little girls as well. And I do different things, and I saw that they wrote this bio for me. I need to ask Vanessa where she got that, but they did this. But when I was asked to speak about what life in Israel is really like, I thought to myself, what do you tell people? What are the things that are important? So I sat down with my staff. They were having lunch, and I came in and I said, what's Israel really like? And some of the remarks for some of the people were very negative. But I'll tell you that Israel is very colorful. Israel is a very exciting place to be, but also a very challenging place to be. There are great things about Israel, and there's never a dull moment, right? And how many years have you guys been here? 34 years, yeah. Wow. 34 years, never a dull moment. No. No. So I got all these really funny remarks from different people in my staff, and then I said, well, I've done some research about certain things so that we can have some comparable perimeters so that we know what we're actually talking about. So here we are. Most of you, if not all of you, are believers in Yeshua, and that makes you a minority in Israel. Statistically, there's about 8 million citizens in Israel. About 6.3 are Jewish people, and then the rest are a mix of Muslims and Christians and many other things as well. The believers, if we're generous with our estimation, are 15,000. Who does math real fast? Not I. So I did this before, and I got this 0.0019% of society are believers. That's a minority. But, and there is a but, we have Yeshua, and that's an advantage. And we're not a minority when we look at you guys coming to visit us from abroad. And that is a huge support to us. It's a huge encouragement to know that around the world, we're not a minority, even though here we may feel this way sometimes. Most of the believers are immigrants. In fact, all of the Israelis are immigrants. Israel was established 70 years ago, almost, 69 years ago, 1948. And what does that actually mean? That means it's a baby nation. Some people maybe in this room were born before Israel was even established. So Israel is an immigrant state. Everyone's an immigrant. The question is just how many generations back you've immigrated. So it's not really a matter of, are you when we use the term Sabra, we mean somebody that was born here. But in essence, we still talk about, I'm a Moroccan, I'm a Persian. My dad's side of the family comes from Iran, from Persia. Shoshani, my family name, Shoshani was the capital of Iran. So, we'll talk a little bit about immigration, because I want you to understand what this whole immigration thing is all about, why the Jewish people are coming here. I'm going to touch a little bit about what Kalev said yesterday, but I promise I wrote these things before he said them yesterday. But so here it is. The cost of living. This is a big deal. Israelis like complaining about this. But let's dig in for a moment here. You guys are all here, so you see. It's a little expensive, isn't it? Certain things you're a little surprised when you go to buy them, or do things. Gas, my gosh. Gas is pretty pricey right now. But for example, a typical home in the United States, and granted, America likes the big and the bigger, but America, a typical home is about 2,000 square feet. In Israel, a typical home is about half of that, 1,000 square feet, and it's usually an apartment with 3 bedrooms that are usually relatively small bedrooms. And the cost for an apartment like that in Jerusalem, just for perspective purposes, is about $600,000. So it's very expensive as well. Cars. Who likes cars? I love cars. I love cars. One day I hope I get a big Porsche, but I probably won't. But we all love cars. In the U.S., the most sold car is a Toyota Camry. Camrys are what bank managers drive in Israel. In Israel, a family car, the size for a family with 3 children, is a Toyota Corolla. That's a typical Israeli car, maybe a little bit smaller. Yeah, it feels a little tight sometimes, but that's a typical Israeli car. And guess how much that kind of a car costs in Israel? $37,000. For real. So most families have 1 car, not 2. And many people will buy used cars or hold on to it longer. But I'm saying these things to give perspective, right? I'm not saying that Israel's a bad place to live, because I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But I'm going to give you a little bit of negative things, and I'm going to finish with a really high note of positive things in Israel. So life in Israel is a little bit more difficult. Bureaucracy. I don't know why we have that. I mean, somebody must have invented this. There must be Dr. Bureaucracy somewhere. But bureaucracy, there's a lot of that in Israel. And to get things done is sometimes a challenge. You go to the bank and they give you a pile of paperwork, you get it signed, you come back, and they say, oh yeah, here's the next pile of paperwork. And I'm thinking, wait, well, couldn't you have just given me both piles to start with? And that goes on and on with different things. But we love Israel. And we'll talk about why we love Israel. Let's talk about income. Income in Israel. The average average annual income before taxes, and we'll talk about taxes, don't worry, is about $35,000 a year. The median is $23,000. That means that half of society makes more than $23,000 a year, and half of society makes less than $23,000 a year. So with the cost of living in Israel, that doesn't go very far. And that means that both parents usually work. That's a typical thing for an Israeli family. Both parents typically work in Israel. But we also have benefits. Israel has social elements. Israel is a great place to do business if you don't mind the red tape and if you don't mind having lawyers and accountants that get a lot done for you. But when you come to Israel, the cost of living is challenging. One of the benefits that I see in Israel is that there is a protection system. We have unemployment. We have maternity leave. A woman in Israel that gives birth gets a 3-month paid maternity leave, and that's paid by the National Security Fund, the Social Security Fund of Israel. That's a benefit. We all pay into that out of our salaries, but that's a benefit. So the weaker people in society do get some help. That doesn't mean there's not a great need for help, because with the cost of living and the incomes, if you take the median, if we add all these numbers together, and we're not going to get into numbers, don't worry. When we talk about numbers, we realize that there's a gap. And that gap in Israel is called debt, like in most places in the world. In Israel, we carry our debt at the bank. We don't carry our debt on a typical credit card like they do in other countries. That's a relatively new term for us, credit card debt. It's about 5 to 6 years old. Most Israelis will say what they call, we have a minus at the bank. That's the typical thing that Israeli families say, we get a minus at the bank. But here's another benefit. Because Israel is so small, only 8 million people, we have a centralized government medical system. And that medical system is actually good. Everybody is covered. We pay a percentage out of our salary. It's an additional tax that we pay. But everybody is covered. Whether you're working or not working, whether you have children or don't have children, or no matter what your status is, you have medical coverage. Sure, the more you make, the more coverage you can get because you can buy other private insurance policies. Another cool thing is we all have heard Israel called the startup nation, right? Who has heard that term before? All of us. Startup nation, startup nation. So we do certain things well when it comes to high tech usually and things like that. And one of the things that they've done with our medical system is that we have a centralized database. So all your information, and I'm not big on all this government knowing all this information, but if I want to go from one doctor to the other or from one insurance company to the other, my information carries with me, and that gives a much better way to get medical care. Also, when you go to the hospital, they have your file. That's a big benefit. So another thing to keep in mind when you go in Israel shopping. So I've been to the U.S. a few times before, and when you go shopping to the U.S., you have this thing. It's called Walmart. It's like a world. You know, I go in, I'm going to clear up at least a couple days. I pull out a mattress and a blanket when I get there. No, I'm just kidding. But Walmart, you can get so much done. You can get your medicine, and you can get your car parts and your bullets, right? Because Americans love their guns. So we get our bullets, and we can get our groceries. And we can get toys and DVDs and appliances. It's like everything in one shop. It's not like that in Israel. In fact, even the grocery shop doesn't carry all the groceries that you need, and we tend to skip between a few shops to do that. Sounds a little bad, right? Doesn't sound so good so far. But why do we come? All right, so there's a lot of really, really good things in Israel. The first thing is that the Bible talks about God's love to Israel. And we are all Christians that believe in the Bible, that love what God loves. And we want our heart to be the same place as God. So we love Israel. And God takes care of the needs of his people. There is a small group of believers in Israel, just 15,000, as I said. And just like the Israelites in the desert, they complained. It seems to be this thing that humans complain. I definitely do that. And as we complain, God still takes care of our needs. He disciplines us, he teaches us, but he's taking care of our needs. So when we look at the Israelites in the desert, they complain, we don't have any food, and God gives them food from heaven. Could you imagine today, you say, God, I'm hungry, bam, a sandwich falls from heaven. And then you say, you're not providing for me, I'd be better off back in Egypt. And I'm thinking, I don't know, what? Water, I'm thirsty, bam, water comes out of a rock. Well, I'd be better off back in Egypt. So God takes care of our needs in Israel. And let's talk about other good things, the culture of Israelis. There's this term. We don't really exercise this term. It's called personal space. In Israel, we don't have much personal space. You may have noticed that you'll stand in line to get a cup of coffee and people are right in your face. And it almost feels aggressive sometimes. But this in your face gets translated into a social care. Not social, but maybe this, well, we have this mutual responsibility. We're in it because we're together with it. If we see an elderly person come on a bus, we get up immediately. If I'm sitting on a bench downtown and I see an elderly person stand next to me, I'm going to get up and give them that seat. A pregnant woman in Israel, my gosh, praised. Everybody stands up and may I clear the path before you. I'm exaggerating, but this personal space thing reflects in this care to each other. We have this mutual care. I mean, for us, our neighbors, we live southwest of Jerusalem, in a little city called Tzul Hadassah. And we've been there for just a few years now. We've been invited by our neighbors to have Shabbat dinner with them, and our kids play together. And I mean, I keep telling this story. I came into the house one day. My daughters are 9 is my oldest. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So they're little girls. And I come into the house one day, and there's this teenager sitting in our house that I've never seen before. Well, her younger brothers play with my daughters, so they were at our house. She's 16. Her parents weren't home, so she came over for dinner at our house. This is a typical Israeli thing. We still visit neighbors that we had years ago because we're all in each other's face, but we're all in this together. It's tough, but we're all in this together, and that is something very, very special. You know, the concept of, we were visiting in the U.S., my wife's family, part of them still live in the U.S., and we were visiting there, and they ran out of, I think it was eggs or milk or something like that. And I go, well, I'll just run over to the neighbor, knock on the door, and ask for a cup of milk. And she said, no, don't do that. And I said, why not? She said, it's not appropriate. That's really weird. And I thought to myself, if I couldn't do that in Israel, knock on my neighbor's door and get a cup of milk or a cup of sugar because I'm in the middle of cooking something and I don't have enough, or a diaper that I'm out of. This is part of who we are as Israelis. We have this mutual care. We love each other. We suffer together, but we're happy together. We fight, but we hug. People are in your face, and they will tell you to your face, that's not a very good-looking dress. And the truth is, it's probably not a very good-looking dress. But they'll also tell you when it is a good-looking dress because they say it to your face. You get this real perspective. Life is real. We care. And I love that about Israel. There's no other place that I've seen that. What else? What's good about Israel? Freedom. Everybody in Israel is weird. Seriously, everyone's an immigrant. So if you came from North Africa, you're going to be part of a cultural thinking of that region. If you came from Eastern Europe, we have millions that came from Eastern Europe, you're going to have part of that thinking. If you came from the United States, you're going to have part of that thinking. If you came from anywhere else, you bring a culture with you. So in a sense, everyone is different. But we're all in this together, right? So what happens? You get this melting pot. You get all these colors of wax thrown into one pot, and it melts it all together, and you get this mess that's called Israelis. And it's a wonderful mess because the connection that we have with each other is very special in Israel. People care. That care is something that is unique and very special. Who feels safe in Israel? We've had a little bit of challenges at the conference this week, but praise God that people are noticing this wonderful conference that's going on. But Israel is one of the safest places in the world. And I want to give you just one statistic. On average, New York City. Who knows how many murders are in New York City? And I'm not dissing, I'm just saying. How many murders a year are there in New York City? Can anybody guess? 350 murders. That doesn't include stabbings, attacks. This is murder. In Israel, there's on average 100 murders a year. But we have problems on our borders. But yet, there's this mutual I can't explain it. There's a feeling of safety in Israel, and there really is a safety. When I come into a building and I have a security guard feel me down and check what I'm carrying, it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel safe. And for some reason, life here feels so safe, even though it seems like everybody hates us and wants us dead. I don't feel this way when I go to other countries, and it's a weird thing. I can't really explain it, but it's real. All right, I have another thing that I love about Israel. This is one of my favorites. Food. Isn't the food here awesome? The vegetables, the fruit, the best. It's amazing. And yesterday I was sitting with a friend. I had lunch together with him in the middle of the market here. And this market here is also pretty crazy because it has all these stands of people that have been there for about 100 years selling all these things. That maybe they're 100 years old or their grandchildren are already selling. But then you get all these really cool restaurants in the middle. And what these restaurants are like these upbeat, creative cuisine, new things. I love it. And you can get a cross the board of foods. Yeah, they were selling in this place, they were selling tacos and hummus in the same place. And the food is awesome, and I love that. And actually being pushed and challenged creates a creativity. I know many of us talk about this, oh, you shoved me in the corner, and I reacted that way, and I think each one of us feels that. We always had situations like that. Israel's a nation that lives like that. We are shoved in the corner, and we have to fight, and we have to succeed. And the Lord has given a special blessing on the people of Israel to be able to use that stressful point to produce amazing things. Checkpoint, the world's leading internet security company. This is the biggest threat in the world right now. It's not atomic bombs or wars or it's cyber warfare. And guess who's leading the war on that? Checkpoint, an Israeli company. And I'm not going to go over that list because I'm sure you've heard it many, many times before. But Israel leads in almost every area of development, of sustainability. All right. One thing that you need to know in Israel, and this is a term that usually only people in the finance world use, but in Israel everybody uses it, it's the CPI. CPI stands for Consumer Price Index. Big words, right? Consumer Price Index means a very simple thing, cost of living. When you take a loan in Israel, when you save money in Israel, when you invest in Israel, when you rent an apartment in Israel, when you take a mortgage in Israel, when you do any financial transaction, for the most part, that deal is going to have a small little sentence that says the price is going to be indexed according to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Why is this important for you to know? The cost of Israel on average goes up about 2% a year. So any transaction that you do, you need to calculate another 2% on average. We've had a few good years of stable, very low growth, which is good for taking money, not good for getting money, I guess. But the point is that it's important to know this term because it does affect every single one of us. The reason for that is because of the lack of stability. We used to have our markets connected to the dollar. So all rent contracts for apartments were in dollars. And then the dollar started going down because the shekel went up, and they had to find something else. So when people say madad in Hebrew or CPI, it's an index that the National Bureau of Statistics of the Government of Israel produces every month. I want you guys to know that term because it's an important term to know when you deal with Israelis. Moving to Israel. It's hard, but it can be done. And I have a few things that I want to say for those of you who are moving here or have moved here or are thinking of moving here. There's a few points that I want to make. Please take no offense, but don't bring your shofar. You don't need to prove that you are Jewish. You don't need to become more religious because Israeli society is relatively secular. Integrate, immerse yourself. Don't work for a place that will allow you to get away with speaking English or your regular language. Dive right in. Dive in, learn the language, learn the culture. You can do it. It's possible. And be smart. Don't dive too deep because you need to be able to get back up. And get advice before you immigrate. And be careful spending money. It's easy to spend money in Israel. It's hard to make money in Israel. And then I'd say the most important thing to do if you immigrate to Israel is connecting with the local congregation. The best congregation in the world is in this hall. It meets every Friday afternoon. I'm just kidding. Well, maybe not. But that's the congregation that I belong to. But I don't even care what congregation you connect with, but make sure that you are plugged in and connected with other believers like you because it is a spiritual challenge to be here. And I want to finish with this, and then we'll have a couple minutes for Q&A. But this is what I want to finish with. The Lord has given this land to the people of Israel. And he speaks about this in Ezekiel, and I actually want to read a few verses from Ezekiel 37. Everything that's going on right now, the immigration back to Israel that's been going on over the past few years, 70 years, and the reestablishment of the state of Israel, this is all fulfillment of biblical prophecy. But there's another part of it that's not being fulfilled yet. Or I'd say it's in its footsteps. It's just beginning these tiny little steps, baby steps of being fulfillment. So this is what it says. The hand of the Lord was on me. Ezekiel is saying this. And he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth amongst them. And I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. Then he said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So he's doing this for his name's sake, not for us. So I prophesied, Ezekiel says, I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. And I guess you guys are getting to what I'm saying about the breath in a minute. This is what it says. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, Son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breathe from the four winds and breathe into these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them. They came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. This is what hasn't happened yet. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. This is exactly what the Jewish people were saying in the diaspora in the early 1900s. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. So the bones are coming to life. They're coming together. We're watching this prophecy come to life now, today. We're watching it. But there's one element that hasn't happened fully yet, and that's the breath. And the breath is us. The breath is Yeshua. And that is only in 0.0019% of Israelis in Israel. And we need to pray, and we need you to stand with us to see that breath expand and fill the people of Israel. But we have no doubt that it's going to happen, because that's what the word of the Lord says, that the breath will fill them up. All right, so I have 7 minutes to give you time for Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer your questions about this subject of what is Israel really like. What's the first question? Go ahead. Hold on, I'll get to you in a minute.
Just wondering, what is the average rent price for a flat, or like a one-bed or like a room in Israel?
Average rent price. One of the problems with real estate in Israel is that the government sort of sets this national plan, and then they go down to city plans, and I'm getting to the answer, I know, it's a little off track. And they set this national plan, and then they go into municipal plans and zoning and neighborhoods and everything. The government doesn't like one-room apartments, because think what happens. If a family lives in a small apartment, you can get in one building that, say, has a permit to build 10,000 square meters, you can get more families, and then the municipal services need to be much greater for kindergartens and schools and cleaning and trash collection and everything that goes with that. So there aren't a lot of small apartments. It's harder to find them. Usually they're older ones. I'd say the average rent, and you probably even know better than I do, about $1,500 US would be the average rent for an average apartment in Jerusalem. And then, no, it'd be two to three bedrooms, depending on the area. And then one of the other things, is that you need to understand that when you pay rent in Israel, and this is unlike the United States, I don't know the law in other places, but unlike the United States, the property tax is on the tenant and not on the landlord. So there's an additional payment, we call it arnona, that you pay to the municipality over the property that you rent. All right, so that's an additional thing on top of utilities and everything else.
I'm interested in economic philosophy, and if a person wants to follow the economic philosophy in Israel, particularly with an interest in what I call kingdom finance and kingdom economics, translating what the Bible teaches into present-day applications, what are some resources that I can follow from Western Canada in order to continue to educate myself?
So one of the things that I'm involved with is I lead an organization called CBN Israel, and the purpose of our organization is building up the local community of believers in Israel. We partner for economic development programs, which I believe is going to be the key for salvation of the Israelis. It's going to be business, because this is what talks to the Jewish people, business and success. All of our economic development programs are done with another organization called Israel First Fruits Center for Economic Advancement, led by Mordecai Wiseman. And what we've done over the past few years, about 10 years ago, there was a couple from Tennessee in the United States, Bill and Jill Caldwell, and they came to Israel with a vision. They retired, they made some wealth, and they decided to come to Israel and bless the people of Israel and teach the believers how to do business. And they came with a special concept, and it was the first time that I ever heard this concept. It was called kingdom business. And I thought, kingdom business is all about making a lot of money, and I can donate it and get that front row seat and everything. And no, it has nothing to do with the amount of money that you donate. It has everything to do into bringing the kingdom of God into the workplace. So resources about that, Israel's a very young nation, and the body in Israel is very young as well. So we use a lot of resources that we pulled from people in the United States, from Canada, from Europe. We use different ideas and we develop them to speak to the community of believers in Israel. And we focus that using, we have a business course that we do, a 7-month course, and that's what Bill and Jill started many, many years ago. They were followed by another couple, a former executive of Hewlett-Packard, that also had the same vision. And he said, we need to build strong characters to prepare people to go into business. So from massive deals that he was doing with Hewlett-Packard, he came to Israel to teach this small group of believers in Israel how to work out their character issues. And he focused on clearing out our past, on seeing the world through God's eyes, seeing a difficult discussion with someone, understanding that that person is coming from a point of suffering. Maybe he's having some problems at home and not necessarily reacting to it, but understanding the root of it. And also using the Holy Spirit as the most effective tool to do business in Israel. So we do the business course, and we have a conference once a year similar to this that we bring in international business people that are interested in Israel. To say that there's a business philosophy of Israelis, you can hear many, many things, books and messages about the good things about Israel and business, and we are inventors. That is the gift that the Lord has given Israel. Every big company in the world, almost every major company in the world, including Apple and IBM, and I can go through the list, has research and development done in Israel. No manufacturing, no management, no administration, no call centers, some, very small amounts, but research and development, because we have been gifted by the Lord with a creative brain. But let's talk about what that does to the Israeli culture. We have a culture of exit. We call it the exit mentality. We don't have large Israeli corporations. We sell out. We move our plants to China. We move our plants even to the United States. And the reason that we do that is that our culture is not based on that long-term sustainability, because it's this, I'm shoved up against the wall. I have to come up with an idea. I did it, and I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life, so I'm going to come up with a new idea. And that's really what happens. So on purpose, I'm giving you the negative perspective of the Israeli philosophy of business and not the positive, is that we're having a problem of sustainable businesses. And this will connect, and I won't go into this, to the whole new millennial concept of we switch jobs every 3 years and we're all creative and everything. But that is a point of prayer for Israel, is that we create a sustainable financial market and not just a revolving one, not just Waze was sold for $1 gazillion to Microsoft or Apple or whoever it is, Google, I don't even remember anymore, because it's exciting that we do all these things and that Israel's on the map and that Israel is behind most of the great inventions in the world, and you can't pick up a cell phone or drive a car or anything without Israeli inventions in it. But for us as the Israeli people, our workplaces are, every time we see an exit, that means that a company of 100 goes down to 20, or a company of 1,000 goes down to 50, and all that employment has moved away. And there's a big exit, and you have the creme de la creme of society that bring up our average. Remember, I told you guys the median salary in Israel is 23,000, but the average is 37. That's a huge gap, and that's because we have a huge amount of people that are, not a huge, a small amount of people that are making a lot of money averaged out with people that are making little bits of money. So that's an answer to a long answer to a short question.
Not only that, I was going to say, I'm a teacher, I don't need that.
John.
There is disconnect. I see it having been here enough times. There's all this great inventiveness and great discoveries, but the everyday life
Yeah.
is so messed up.
Yeah.
You don't take numbers in America to give the bank or to go to the post office or any of it.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing.
It doesn't trickle down. And that's one of our challenges, is that it doesn't trickle down. This whole startup nation thing and I keep going back to this because this is what you are probably hearing a lot of, is this big exit that Israel did, and they invented this, and that has been done. It doesn't trickle down. You're right. The salaries are not going up at the rate of the cost of living, and that creates a social challenge. The need is great. Poverty in Israel is a real deal. There are people that are really struggling on a regular basis. Debt is serious. People are carrying tremendous amounts of debt. So this is another place to pray for Israel, is how does this creative and entrepreneurial mind trickle down into the day-to-day life of the people that are going through the marketplace right next to us here and can't afford to buy what they need to feed their family, or maybe skipping a meal so that their children can have a meal. So these are the typical things that we do need to be thinking about as we think about Israel, as we pray for Israel. My time's up. Thank you guys. You guys have been awesome.